cat was left behind when its owner moved away, but what transpired 8 years later was nothing short of extraordinary. The small ginger kitten huddled beneath the sprawling oak tree, its emerald eyes wide with trepidation. No more than a few weeks old, it was abandoned and alone in a vast, unfamiliar world. Autumn leaves danced around him, a symphony of rust and gold, yet they provided little solace against the biting wind. George, a retired librarian with a heart as warm as his well-worn tweed jacket, spotted the shivering kitten during his morning stroll. Unable to leave the helpless creature to fend for itself, he gently scooped up the tiny feline, his rough hands surprisingly tender. The kitten, initially wary, soon nestled into the warmth of George's embrace, a soft purr rumbling in its chest. Back at his cozy cottage, George set about making the kitten comfortable. He warmed some milk, fashioned a makeshift bed from an old shoebox lined with a soft blanket, and named his new companion Rusty, inspired by his vibrant coat. Rusty, in turn, seemed to take an immediate liking to George, rubbing against his legs and following him around the house with endearing curiosity. Days turned into weeks, and Rusty flourished under George's care. He transformed into a playful, mischievous kitten, exploring every nook and cranny of the cottage. George, a lifelong bachelor, found his quiet routine pleasantly disrupted by Rusty's antics. The silence was now filled with joyful sounds of purring, playful meows, and the occasional crash of a toppled knick-knack. Their days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings began with Rusty impatiently pawing at George's face for breakfast, followed by leisurely strolls in the garden. Afternoons were spent curled up by the fireplace, Rusty dozing contentedly in George's lap as he read aloud from his favorite classics. Evenings brought playful chases around the house, culminating in peaceful slumber with Rusty nestled beside George in bed. Rusty's presence filled a void in George's life that he hadn't realized existed. The quiet solitude he once cherished was now replaced with comforting companionship. Rusty was not just a pet, he was family, and George, in turn, was Rusty's entire world, a source of warmth, safety, and unconditional love. Their bond, forged in those early days, was one of deep affection and mutual dependence, a connection that would be tested but never broken, a testament to the enduring power of love and loyalty. Years passed, marked by changing seasons and the gentle rhythm of their shared life. Rusty, no longer the clumsy kitten, matured into a handsome ginger cat with a sleek coat and a knowing glint in his emerald eyes. George, his hair now a crown of silver, moved with a slower gait, but his eyes still held the same warmth and kindness. Their bond deepened with each passing year. Rusty was George's constant companion, his furry shadow, following him around the house, supervising his gardening chores, and curling up on his lap as he listened to classical music on his old gramophone. George, in turn, doted on Rusty, brushing, his fur spoiling him with treats, and talking to him as if he were an old friend. Their days were filled with simple pleasures, morning walks in the park where Rusty would chase butterflies and stalk squirrels, much to the amusement of other. Park-goers, lazy afternoons spent reading by the window, Rusty perched on the sill, basking in the sunbeams, and evenings filled with the comforting crackle of the fireplace and the soothing melody of George's voice as he read aloud from his well-worn books. Rusty had an uncanny ability to sense George's moods. On days when George felt a twinge of loneliness or the ache of aging bones, Rusty would stay close, purring softly and rubbing against his legs as if offering silent comfort. And when George was happy, Rusty would be his playful self, chasing his tail, batting at dust motes, and bringing a smile to George's face with his silly antics. Their connection transcended the typical relationship between a man and his pet. They were soulmates, each providing the other with unconditional love and companionship. Rusty was more than just a cat. He was George's family, his confidant, his furry guardian angel. And George was Rusty's whole world, his protector, his provider, his source of unwavering affection. One crisp autumn afternoon, as they sat by the fireplace, George confided in Rusty, "You know, old friend, you're the best company a man could ask for. I don't know what I'd do without you." Rusty, in response, nuzzled his head against George's hand, a soft purr rumbling in his chest, a silent promise of unwavering loyalty and love. Little did they know that their peaceful existence was about to be disrupted, their bond put to the ultimate test. A storm was brewing on the horizon, threatening to tear them apart. Winter descended upon the quaint town, blanketing the landscape in a pristine layer of white. The once vibrant hues of autumn gave way to a stark, icy beauty. Inside the cozy cottage, George and Rusty found solace from the biting cold, their bond seemingly impervious to the harshness of the season. One frosty morning, as George ventured out to fetch the newspaper, his foot slipped on a patch of ice hidden beneath the freshly fallen snow. A sharp crack echoed through the quiet morning air as he fell, his ankle twisting beneath him, the pain immediate and intense, a searing sensation shooting up his leg. Rusty, sensing the distress in George's cries, rushed to his side, nudging, his head against George's face, mewing softly, his emerald eyes filled with concern. But Rusty's comforting presence couldn't alleviate the pain or mend the broken bone. Neighbors, alerted by George's calls for help, rushed to his aid. An ambulance wailed in the distance, its siren a jarring intrusion into the peaceful morning. As the paramedics carefully lifted George onto a stretcher, Rusty watched, his tail twitching nervously, a sense of foreboding settling in his feline heart. The diagnosis was a fractured ankle requiring surgery and a lengthy rehabilitation. George, his independence suddenly snatched away, faced the daunting prospect of moving into an assisted living facility. His heart ached at the thought of leaving his beloved cottage, his sanctuary. But more than that, he worried about Rusty. "Who will take care of my Rusty?" he fretted to his concerned neighbors. They assured him they would find a good home for his feline companion, but their words offered little comfort. Rusty was more than just a pet. He was family. The thought of being separated from him filled George with a profound sense of loss. As George was wheeled out of the cottage, his eyes met Rusty's. He managed a weak smile. "Don't you worry, old friend. I'll be back." But the uncertainty in his voice mirrored Rusty's worried gaze. The ambulance doors closed, and Rusty was left alone in the silent cottage, the warmth of the fire doing little to dispel the growing chill in his heart. The separation was abrupt and unexpected, a cruel twist of fate that tore apart the two companions. Rusty, bewildered and lost, wandered through the empty rooms, his plaintive meow echoing in the silence. The familiar scent of George lingered in the air, a painful reminder of his absence. The world, once a haven of warmth and companionship, had suddenly turned cold and unfamiliar. Rusty, his heart heavy with a sense of abandonment, curled up on George's favorite armchair, his emerald eyes fixed on the door, hoping for a return that seemed increasingly unlikely. The days that followed George's departure were a blur of confusion and despair for Rusty. The once familiar routine was shattered. No gentle hand woke him with a morning caress. No warm lap welcomed him for his afternoon nap. The house, once filled with the comforting sounds of George's presence, now echoed with unsettling silence. Rusty wandered aimlessly from room to room, his plaintive meow a desperate plea for his beloved companion's return. He sniffed at George's favorite armchair, his scent lingering faintly on the worn fabric, a bittersweet reminder of their shared moments. He pawed at the closed door, as if willing it to open and reveal George standing on the other side, a warm smile on his face. The neighbors, true to their word, took turns checking on Rusty, providing him with food and water, but their kindness couldn't fill the void left by George. Their touch was unfamiliar, their voices lacking the soothing cadence that Rusty had grown accustomed to. He longed for the familiar weight of George's hand stroking his fur, the sound of his voice murmuring words of affection. As the days turned into weeks, Rusty's hope dwindled. The initial frenzy of searching for George gave way to quiet despair. He spent most of his time curled up on George's bed, his body a tight ball of misery. The scent of George on the pillows and blankets offered fleeting comfort, a temporary reprieve from the overwhelming loneliness. His appetite waned, his once vibrant coat grew dull, and the playful spark in his emerald eyes dimmed, replaced by haunting sadness. The neighbors, concerned by his deteriorating condition, decided it was time to find him a new home. The transition was difficult. Rusty, still grieving the loss of George, resisted the change. He shied away from the touch of his new family. His heart closed off to any affection. He missed the familiar smells of his old home, the comforting routine, the unwavering love of his human companion. His new family, a young couple with 2 boisterous children, tried their best to make him feel welcome. They showered him with toys and treats, their laughter filling the house with a vibrancy that was both unfamiliar and unsettling to Rusty. He longed for the quiet companionship he had shared with George, the peaceful rhythm of their days. Despite their efforts, Rusty remained withdrawn, spending most of his time hiding under furniture, his eyes filled with deep sadness. The joy had gone out of his life, replaced by a gnawing sense of loss and abandonment. He was a cat out of time, a creature trapped in a world that no longer held his beloved companion. The initial shock of separation gradually gave way to a grudging acceptance. Rusty, his spirit dampened but not extinguished, began to adapt to his new surroundings. The constant presence of the children, though initially overwhelming, started to offer a different kind of comfort. Their playful energy and innocent affection chipped away at the wall around Rusty's heart. He found himself drawn to their games, cautiously batting at the toys they offered, even indulging in the occasional chase around the house. Their laughter was infectious, their touch surprisingly gentle. Slowly, tentatively, Rusty began to respond, a flicker of playfulness returning to his emerald eyes. The young couple, Sarah and Mark, were patient and understanding. They gave Rusty space when he needed it, offering affection without overwhelming him. They spoke to him in soft, soothing tones, their voices a balm to his wounded spirit. Gradually, Rusty began to trust them, to see them as a source of comfort and security. Life in the new home was different. It was filled with the sounds of children's laughter, the clatter of toys, and the aroma of home-cooked meals. It was a far cry from the quiet solitude of his life with George, but it had its own charm. Rusty found himself enjoying the warmth of family life, the constant activity, the feeling of belonging. He discovered new favorite spots in the house, a sunny corner by the window where he could bask in the afternoon sun, a cozy nook under the stairs where he could retreat for some quiet time. He even developed a fondness for the family dog, ACUE, lumbering golden retriever named Buddy, whose playful antics often brought a smile to Rusty's face. Yet despite the newfound contentment, the memory of George lingered. Rusty would often find himself staring at the front door, a flicker of hope in his eyes as if expecting George to walk through it at any moment. At night, curled up on Sarah's bed, he would dream of his old friend, his heart aching with bittersweet longing. One evening, as the family gathered around the fireplace, Rusty perched on the armrest, listening to Sarah read a story to the children. The scene was strangely familiar. The warmth of the fire, the sound of a gentle voice, the feeling of contentment. For a moment, Rusty was transported back to his old life, to the cozy evenings spent with George. A tear rolled down Sarah's cheek as she finished the story. Rusty, sensing her sadness, nuzzled his head against her hand, a silent gesture of comfort. In that moment, a new bond was formed, a connection built on shared affection and understanding. Rusty realized that while he might never forget George, he could still find love and happiness in his new life. 8 years had passed since the fateful winter morning that changed Rusty's life. He was no longer the young, energetic cat who chased butterflies in the park. His movements were slower, his naps longer, his once vibrant coat streaked with silver. But his emerald eyes still held a spark, a testament to his resilient spirit. Life with Sarah, Mark, and their now grown children, Emily and Ben, had become his new normal. He was a cherished member of the family, his presence a comforting constant in their busy lives. He had his routines, his favorite spots, and his special bond with each family member. Emily, now a budding artist, often sketched him curled up on her window seat, capturing his quiet grace in her drawings. Ben, the athlete, would often find Rusty waiting for him at the door after his morning runs, a silent welcome home. Sarah and Mark, their love for Rusty deepening with each passing year, continued to shower him with affection and care. One sunny afternoon, Sarah announced that they were going on a family outing. "We're visiting a special place today," she said, a hint of mystery in her voice. Rusty, intrigued, followed them to the car, his tail held high with anticipation. The car journey was long, winding through scenic countryside. Finally, they arrived at their destination, a stately building surrounded by manicured gardens. A sign at the entrance read, "Sunnyside Assisted Living." Rusty, his senses heightened, felt a strange sense of familiarity, a faint echo of a scent buried deep in his memory. As they entered the building, a wave of emotions washed over Rusty. The smell of disinfectant mingled with the faint aroma of lavender and freshly baked cookies. The sounds of chatter and laughter echoed down the hallways, punctuated by the occasional clink of teacups. It was a place of both comfort and sadness, a place where life's journey was nearing its end. They were led to a common room where a group of elderly residents gathered for their afternoon tea. Rusty, his curiosity piqued, followed Sarah and the children as they made their way through the room, greeting the residents with smiles and warm words. And then he saw him, sitting in a corner armchair, a book resting on his lap, an elderly man with a shock of white hair and kind eyes that twinkled behind his spectacles. His face was etched with the lines of time, his movements slow and deliberate, but there was something undeniably familiar about him. A scent, a presence that tugged at Rusty's heartstrings. It was George. Time seemed to stand still as Rusty and George locked eyes across the crowded room. 8 years had passed, etching lines on their faces and slowing their steps, but the bond between them remained as strong as ever. A wave of emotion surged through Rusty, disbelief, joy, an overwhelming sense of love and longing. He let out a soft meow, a sound filled with years of unspoken words and suppressed emotions. The sound, faint yet familiar, cut through the chatter in the room, reaching George's ears. He looked up, his gaze drawn to the ginger cat standing by the doorway, his emerald eyes shining with recognition. A gasp escaped George's lips, his book slipping from his grasp. "Rusty," he whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief. He slowly rose from his chair, his eyes never leaving the cat that had once been his constant companion, his furry confidant. Rusty, unable to contain himself any longer, darted towards George, weaving through the surprised residents and startled teacups. He leaped onto George's lap, his purr vibrating through the old man's frail frame. He nuzzled his head against George's chest, inhaling the familiar scent of old books and pipe tobacco, a scent that had haunted his dreams for years. Tears welled up in George's eyes as he wrapped his arms around Rusty, his touch gentle yet firm. "My boy," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "You've come back to me." He buried his face in Rusty's soft fur, the years of loneliness and longing melting away in that moment of reunion. The room fell silent, the residents watching the heartwarming scene unfold with a mixture of awe and envy. Sarah and the children, their eyes brimming with tears, exchanged smiles, their hearts filled with joy for both Rusty and George. "He never forgot you," Sarah said softly, approaching George. "He's always held a special place in his heart for you." George looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for bringing him back to me." He looked down at Rusty, his fingers gently stroking the cat's fur. "I never thought I'd see you again, old friend," he whispered. Rusty, in response, purred louder, his body vibrating with contentment. He had found his way back to his beloved companion, his heart overflowing with a love that had endured years of separation and loss. The reunion was a balm to both their souls, a testament to the enduring power of their bond. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of human kindness and the comforting presence of his beloved cat, George felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He knew with certainty that warmed his heart that he was no longer alone. Brock News of Rusty's reappearance spread through Sunnyside like wildfire. Residents, intrigued by the tale of the long-lost cat and his reunion with his former owner, flocked to George's room, eager to witness the heartwarming spectacle. Rusty, once a shy and reserved cat, found himself the center of attention, basking in the affection and admiration of his new audience. He became a regular visitor at Sunnyside, accompanying Sarah and the children on their weekly visits. He would spend hours curled up on George's lap, purring contentedly as the old man read to him or recounted stories from his past. The residents would gather around, their faces lit up with smiles, their hearts warmed by the sight of the two companions reunited. Rusty's presence brought a renewed sense of joy and purpose to George's life. The days that had once stretched out before him, empty and monotonous, were now filled with anticipation and warmth. He would wake up each morning eager for the moment. When Rusty would arrive, his furry body a comforting weight on his lap, his purr a soothing melody to his ears. Rusty, in turn, thrived in the atmosphere of love and attention. He wandered through the common room, greeting the residents with gentle head bumps and soft meows, becoming a furry therapist of sorts. His presence eased their loneliness, his purr calming their anxieties. He would often curl up on the laps of those who were bedridden, his warmth and gentle purring offering comfort and companionship. He would sit patiently by the side of those lost in the fog of dementia, his presence a grounding anchor in their confused world. The staff at Sunnyside marveled at the transformation in their residents. The once quiet and withdrawn individuals were now animated and engaged, their faces lit up with smiles, their voices filled with laughter. Rusty, the unassuming ginger cat, had become a beacon of hope and joy, a furry ambassador of love and healing. One afternoon, as Rusty lay curled up on George's lap, the old man stroked his fur, his voice filled with wonder. "You know, Rusty," he said, "you've brought so much happiness into this place. You've given us all a reason to smile again." Rusty, in response, nuzzled his head against George's hand, his purr echoing the old man's sentiments. He had found a new purpose in his life, a mission to bring comfort and joy to those who needed it most. In doing so, he rediscovered the joy in his own life, the joy of giving and receiving love, the joy of connection and companionship. As the seasons turned, painting the world outside Sunnyside in vibrant hues of gold and crimson, the bond between Rusty and George deepened. Their days fell into a comfortable rhythm filled with shared moments of quiet companionship and heartwarming interactions. Rusty became a fixture at Sunnyside, eagerly anticipated by both residents and staff. He had his favorite spots: a sunny window seat overlooking the gardens, a cozy armchair beside the fireplace, and of course, George's lap, where he would spend hours purring contentedly. He developed a special rapport with each resident, sensing their moods and offering comfort in his own unique way. He would sit patiently by the side of Mrs. Henderson, a former pianist, as she reminisced about her concert days, his presence a silent acknowledgement of her fading memories. He would playfully bat at the knitting needles of Mr. Johnson, a retired sailor, eliciting chuckles from the old man as he struggled to reclaim his yarn. Rusty's presence extended beyond the confines of Sunnyside. He became a local celebrity, his story spreading through the town and beyond. Newspaper articles featured his heartwarming tale, and local schools invited him for visits, where he charmed the children with his gentle demeanor and playful antics. He became a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder that love and companionship can transcend age and circumstance. One crisp winter morning, as snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in pristine white, Rusty curled up on George's lap, his purr a soothing counterpoint to the crackling fire. George, his hand gently stroking Rusty's fur, looked down at his feline companion, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You know, Rusty," he said, his voice soft with emotion, "you've given me so much more than I could ever have given you. You've brought joy and laughter back into my life, and you've shown me the true meaning of unconditional love." Rusty, in response, nuzzled his head against George's hand, his purr growing louder, his emerald eyes shining with a love that knew no bounds. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the comforting presence of his beloved cat, George felt a sense of contentment he hadn't experienced in years. He knew with certainty that warmed his heart that he had found his true home, not in a place, but in the love of his faithful companion. Spring arrived, bringing with it a renewed sense of hope and vitality. The gardens at Sunnyside burst into bloom, a riot of colors and fragrances that filled the air with a sweet symphony of life. Rusty, now a senior cat himself, basked in the warm sunshine, his aging body rejuvenated by the gentle caress of the spring breeze. He continued his daily routine, visiting the residents, offering comfort and companionship, his presence a beacon of joy in their twilight years. He had become an integral part of the Sunnyside family, his story woven into the fabric of their lives. One day, as Rusty lay curled up on George's lap, the old man's breathing grew shallow. His hand, that had been gently stroking Rusty's fur, stilled. A hush fell over the room as the residents gathered around, their faces etched with concern. Sarah and the children, alerted by the staff, rushed to George's side, their hearts heavy with a sense of foreboding. They knelt beside him, their hands gently holding his, their voices whispering words of love and comfort. Rusty, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, rose from George's lap and nestled beside him, his purr a soft lullaby. In the quiet room, he nuzzled his head against George's cheek, his emerald eyes filled with deep understanding. George's breathing grew fainter, his grip on their hands loosening. A tear rolled down his cheek as a faint smile touched his lips. "Rusty," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "My good boy." And then he was gone. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by a silence heavy with grief. Sarah and the children wept openly, their hearts breaking at the loss of their beloved George. The residents, their faces etched with sorrow, offered words of comfort and shared memories of the kind old man who had touched their lives. Rusty remained by George's side, his purr a steady rhythm in the quiet room. He stayed there long after. The others had left, his presence a silent vigil, his love a final farewell. In the days that followed, Rusty seemed to carry the weight of grief on his small shoulders. He moved with a slower gait, his naps longer, his purr less frequent. He would often sit by George's empty armchair, his emerald eyes gazing at the vacant space, his heart aching with a profound sense of loss. But Rusty, a creature of resilience and unwavering love, gradually found solace in the memories of his time with George. He would recall their shared moments, the cozy evenings by the fireplace, the playful chases in the garden, the quiet companionship that had sustained them through the years. He would revisit their favorite spots in the garden, inhaling the familiar scents, feeling the warmth of the sun on his fur, remembering the joy they had shared. He would curl up on George's empty bed, his scent lingering on the pillows, a comforting reminder of their enduring bond. And as the seasons turned, painting the world in vibrant hues of life and renewal, Rusty carried the legacy of their love in his heart. He continued to visit the residents at Sunnyside, offering comfort and companionship, his presence a testament to the enduring power of love and friendship. For Rusty knew with a certainty that transcended words that the bond he shared with George was not bound by time or mortality. It was a love that had woven its way into the fabric of his being, a love that would forever remain a beacon of warmth and light in his heart. Comment below. What would you do if you found a cat in this situation? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Share this with an animal lover. You'll make their day.